All right. There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Perfect. Cool. So, we'll just start here. For anyone who's watching, Grant and I are going to be talking about basically training for artistic athletes and how that's different than everything else. So if you want, while a few people are still joining here, Grant, you want to maybe a quick introduction to anyone who's not familiar with you and BodyByCain. Give a quick introduction for us.
Yeah, for sure. BodyByCain is my Instagram handle. I'm out of the Raleigh, North Carolina area. Do a lot of strength and conditioning work, a lot of dancers, other athletes as well, primarily with dance currently. But, yeah, kind of a brief rundown.
All right, cool. A question I meant to ask you, do you have any remote options if anyone's not local to Raleigh and wants to get involved with you, or not currently?
So, yeah, I do. I actually run a online service as well. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So if anyone is in Raleigh, definitely come see you, and if not, you have some options online.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, so we will kind of just jump in, and of course, if anyone has any questions for us as we're going, just drop those in the comments. So the first thing I kind of wanted to touch on, I guess, because you and I both come from a background in sports and athletics, is if you could maybe dig into your process of adapting your training for performing artists, and what's different, what's unique about that?
So with that, typically, as far as like with dancers, I do take a very strong strength and conditioning kind of approach with everything. Big on just like core engagement, incorporating basic compound lifts, things like that. So we are, developing general strength, explosion, things like that. So it's a very like general strength and conditioning kind of base, but with a dance kind of twist on it.
Okay. Awesome. And that's, my opinion, and I think what I see is they're missing the most is they spend so much time trying to work other facets that they haven't really developed the strength necessary. Like if you want to jump, you have to have a base level of strength to jump. If you want to have good balance, you need to have the strength to hold your balance and stuff like that. If I'm going to dig in, what might we see different from you training, let's say, a bodybuilder? I know you've coached some people through competitions through one of your dancers programs. Are there any big things that we'd see differently?
So yeah, definitely. Typically with dance, it's going to be all like free moving, never touch a machine kind of weight training.
Yeah.
Just like letting the body naturally move and kind of like letting me, develop off of like what you do naturally. Bodybuilders, it's starting to change with bodybuilding, starting to kind of apply a little bit more of a strength and conditioning approach with that. So bodybuilders starting to jump and, move around a little bit more, but as a basis, it's kind of, still remaining, very old school. But as far as like with dance, I mean, there's a lot of like different kinds of training, as long as like extra hip mobility, increased flexibility training, things like that.
Yeah. And kind of touching on that, because I think, and this is kind of something I wanted to bring up later, so we'll come back to this, but just focus on the program. One thing for bodybuilders, or the goals, I guess, for bodybuilding for dancers are quite different of a program.
Yeah.
In most cases, bodybuilders, who I think still have the limelight, like when you think of weight training, I think people immediately start looking at bodybuilders. But a bodybuilder's goals are extremely different than a dancer's goals. I don't know if you would could elaborate, like maybe being a bodybuilder yourself, what are your goals in training, and what might a dancer's goals in their training program align to?
So actually funny. Actually, there can be a little bit of a kind of a correlation between the two. I've actually had a lot of bodybuilders, especially like male dancers.
That's a good point.
A lot of their like goals are not that far off of like what a male bodybuilder would be looking for, as far as like, put on lean muscle mass, lean up, become a little bit stronger. Things.
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff actually does kind of mesh together. It's just, the way you apply their different with the performance-based versus the more aesthetic-based training.
And that's good. And I don't train a lot of males, and I'm looking to get more into working with males in 2020. So it's funny that my mind doesn't go there at all. Yeah. That's a very good point. And I think a key point you've mentioned is that, and maybe some people don't understand why, but you said like with bodybuilding, you might be focusing a little bit more on machines, different ranges of motion and stuff, because they don't necessarily have a performance aspect. They have a physique aspect, a look aspect they're looking for. But then you mentioned with your male dancers, you might have a similar goal, but you're approaching it a lot differently because you're moving the body through a lot of different components. So they're having to control their body more realistic to what would be in dance. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. Now though, because I get, as training females a lot, I know you have plenty of female clients as well. I think when they think weight training and they think bodybuilder, that's immediately like, that's not good. So the goals there, I hope, are quite different. Would you agree there? And could you elaborate there?
Yeah, so the typical kind of goal set that I found, like with the girls, has always been typically is like they all want to get stronger. All want to jump higher, earn quicker and harder. Overall, dance easier. So that way you go to class and then you have rehearsal all day and then you're not wrecked at the end of the day. So the big thing is for them, it's just like kind of more like, in my opinion, longevity. Kind of setting themselves up as they go. That's what I kind of have found with that. Now, I have had a few, surprisingly, that have been kind of more like the male clients of, they're not afraid to, get a little bit stronger and look a little bit bigger, which I think is a great thing as far as, like, being very progressive with the...
And I guess just because I'm thinking that some of our viewers here are like, I still don't know about resistance training. Maybe could you talk to us a little quickly, like maybe about some of the results you're seeing with your dancers from, are some of them completely new to resistance training?
Yeah. And actually literally a few of them have been, even within the past like month or two, are new to just training with me in general. And like, I'm talking coming in, never been in the gym in their entire life. So it's very new, and it's very much like, you have them, you're going to shape a kind of, like just kind of thought process for them. So it is different amongst, coming in, very brand new.
And are they, what kind of things are they coming back to tell you? Like when they get back into dance, what kind of, benefits are they seeing?
Yeah, typically after, I would say probably after about like the first month or so, what's happening as they're going to class and they're talking about, I got better muscle engagement, like certain moves they may do. They may say, I got better feel for my glutes, or I can get my hips under me a little bit better. Engagement through jumps and turns and things like that. What's happening is even within a month, things are starting to already become easier. So that's been a good thing to see within, a short amount of time.
And that's a very big point I think I bring up in cross training. And I want to have another question for you, but I'll finish what I was saying first, is that when you resistance train, you're able to, even with big compound movements, you're able to isolate a little bit better because you're not trying to like hold your leg up while you're spinning and you're trying to like watch your partner at the same time. So in training, it's just you and your body and whatever implement you're using, and you can like feel things better. So then when you go into rehearsal and class, you've already learned like how your glutes feel. And just kind of a funny story, which you might get a kick out of. So I was we work with a few studios locally here in Tampa, and I was at a studio and I asked our new group we're training, and I was like, how many of you have heard your instructor tell you to engage your glutes? And like everyone raised their hand. And then I asked, how many of you have ever felt your glutes work? And it was like less than half. And then 2 said, what are your glutes? And I'm like, you've been told to engage your glutes for, who knows, a year, 3 years, 8 years, and you've never really connected with them, to the point for most of them, never felt them work. And on the other hand, maybe you never even had that broken down for you. And I feel like that's where this kind of stuff can come in. Like, I don't expect you while you're at a bar dancing to necessarily like take time to like let me move and get my glutes working. But in the gym, I would 100% expect you to be like, yeah, I'm feeling that here.
Yeah.
Have you noticed, I guess maybe if not glutes, anything that was a big aha moment or area of their body they maybe haven't connected with before training?
Well, I would definitely just elaborate the glute thing. Yeah, 100%. That's been the big one. When they can feel their glutes and they can kind of take what we do at the gym, apply it to like their warm-ups before class, and also the real thing is they won't be one-on-one training every single day. It's just that's a tough luxury to be able to work with. But if they can take things that like we've done in the gym and then apply that to before class, and all of a sudden they get that feeling, that's been the big thing. But on top of the glutes, I honestly believe like core and just let the core actually work, and then getting the hamstrings to work in a different way, other feeling like they're being stretched the whole time. But then as far as like flexion, just feeling like they're more stable underneath them when they jump.
That's good. And coming from the rehab side, for female dancers, hamstring strains next to some ankle and Achilles is like the number one injury. So there's a few things down at the ankle more, so it's a very important thing. And core is a good one because, as you're probably seeing, so many dancers initiate movements like with their back. Right off the bat, they're boom, let me get that back extension. Awesome. So cross training as well, resistance training. You post a lot of really cool things, but not all of them look like dance. And this is something big because I think you see some Instagram pages and stuff who basically resistance train with just dance. So where do you weigh in on that? On your post and why your stuff might not look exactly like dance?
Okay, yeah. So kind of elaborate on the whole, there's a lot of instructors, trainers, coaches that apply that very like dance heavy movement in the gym, a lot of times on like unstable surfaces, things like that. In my opinion, a lot of times like you don't necessarily need to train that way in the gym because that's what you're doing all day. Like then it almost doesn't become cross training. So a lot of the movements I do are honestly, if you really get into them, a lot of them are very like basic movements with just slight adaptations to make it more beneficial for the players. The different moves, for instance, like the plate bridge with the feet on the RDLs. So things like that in comparison to doing that maybe like on a Bosu ball, the unstable surface, there hasn't been a lot of research showing that you get a lot of benefit from that. So it's kind of why put yourself on an unstable surface with weight when you can go, for instance, with the bridge to the gap theory with the plates, you can put somebody on 2 plates, train them more in a point shoe kind of stability, stable surface, and you can add weight. You get a little bit more out of things like that versus an unstable, very like dance focused movement.
I feel like, man, so many things. First of all, anyone who's worked with me and hears this is going to think like I paid you because I talk about it so much. I'm like, cross training shouldn't look like dance. Dance injuries are more often than not overuse injuries. So if we just do the same thing, you're more likely to get injured. And then what you're addressing is like, but the point in training is like to build your base, to build your foundation.
Exactly.
And for anyone who doesn't know, this is actually something I don't implement, but I've made Grant promise in the past to explain this to me. The plate bridge, that's where you watch his page, you'll see it come up, but there's 2 weight plates, and there's a gap, and your forefoot's on one and your heel's on the other. Could you briefly touch on that now, or is that a little more in depth? That might be one.
I can break it down for sure. So with the 2 plates, so what happens is your feet become unstable. First off, because you're on 1 foot. You can do this with 2 feet, 1 foot, 2 feet. I use it a lot primarily with 1 foot exercises. And I actually got this from another trainer on Instagram, Dr. Joel Seidman. I don't know if you're familiar.
Yes.
Great dude's genius. He's out in that area. And what happens is when you get on the plates, you start to actually work muscles in your feet that you wouldn't actually work while just being on the ground or even in a shoe or on a BOSU ball.
Yeah.
And what happens is now it stimulates all the way from the feet up the leg through the calves, and now the shin's working, the calf's working a little bit differently, feet's working, the hip's now working, and the surface is still stable.
Where would they expect to feel that the most? Would you feel it more in like the arch in the foot, or would it really be in the calf, or is it really just everywhere?
So typically through the through the shin, calf.
Okay.
What happen is it's pretty much going to exploit any little weaknesses you have. So if you're one of those people that like you pronate real bad, or you like supinate real bad with your feet, you're going to naturally go with what you're weak at. So if you and you're going to get on the plate and it's going to cause you to supinate. So your goal there is, drive the toe down and make yourself even out. So it kind of shows you where you're weak and allows you to kind of build from that.
That's cool. And I keep saying I need to try that, and I haven't, but I'm going to include that in my warm-up tomorrow to give it a feel and see. So that's great. I think going from that, a good place to go here would also be to touch base on, and if anyone's watching and hasn't been to BodyByCain's page, Instagram, he has a ton of creative exercises. And that's something I think anyone coming from the sport field going into working with dancers has to be a little creative. There's not a lot of us out there. There's not a lot of base work. So we're doing it right now. We're creating the stuff that and I've included, and I commented on this video, and I think I shared it on my story. You had the anterior sling work you were doing, and I think you had a pull down, and I've used that in my online programs. I've mentioned to people like, hey, this is a great move I found here. What is your creative process? Are you coming up with them just while you're working with dancers? Are you, how do you kind of make those up?
So a lot of this stuff, so the oblique sling training is something that's actually kind of been around for a long time that people, I've just kind of like dove into a little bit more. And this is something like I did like when I played college and things like that. Like a lot of stuff that I'm kind of actually like circling back to and saying, what better way can I reinvent myself for these dancers? And all of a sudden we get to this oblique sling training. And I put it into a phase where we're working about 4 weeks at a time, where I might go extremely heavy with oblique sling training. For instance, like the video, I know exactly the video you're talking about. So for things like that, I might work through like a 4-week period, and we're seeing with oblique sling training, all of a sudden, especially the girls with the really sway back, all of a sudden they're noticing that they can pull their hips under them and their core's working, and now all of a sudden we're not having that low back pain that we were constantly throughout every week. You're seeing a little bit more just kind of a rehab process, and a little bit they're just becoming stronger through that posterior chain around there, things like that.
Yeah. And that's one creative thing. And all these other things, I mean, you really have tons of new interesting exercise. Are you mainly taking them from your history and then modifying them? Is that where most of them come from, you'd say?
A lot of times, yeah. And as trainers, as coaches, you basically want to build off of your base, basic exercise, because at the end of the day, the basics are what's going to make it happen. That's what's going to get it done. As far as the oblique sling training, this is what I've actually incorporated. Instead of doing like a traditional strength and conditioning workout where you got, set 1, 2, 3, we'll do that. Then you have core it then, instead of honestly wasting people's time with crunches and things like that. I've actually, oblique sling training, and we're seeing a little bit more of a benefit from that than you would just, anything else.
Funny that you mentioned crunches, because when we first founded my company, DPT Fit, 4 years ago now, our first little slogan was beyond crunches and plies, because I felt like in the rehab setting, they'd be like, oh, you're a dancer, let's do plies. I'm kind of like, wait, they do plies all day. Why would they come here to do the things they don't do at dance? And crunches, when I was at the studio, oh, you want to know what core would do? Crunches. And I'm kind of like, I would say in a dance-specific pattern, a crunches is almost useless. What you're doing is all right, I'm engaging my core, I'm engaging maybe my hip flexors, my adductors, and then I'm going to use my arms, I'm going to do some dynamic movement. It's so much more specific to dance. And it doesn't look like dance, which I think is crucial because it's not dance. It's what you need to dance. So
it's funny, the oblique stuff is something I've actually I've been training now for 6 years total. And this is something like when I first came out of college from playing and I just got certified and I was moving in, I was working with a lot of like football guys and like baseball guys, especially with baseball guys, like seeing them do oblique sling training is something I never really thought about until I got working with dancers more. I'm like, wow, these movements are so similar. I've moved them into that. So the oblique sling stuff is something that I think is great among any athlete.
And it's something I feel like I learned about in like XFiz in college and then kind of like dropped. Yeah. And now, I mean, literally I kind of saw you in a few videos and I've dug into it and I have like read articles on it. I've seen anterior, posterior oblique slings. And now I'm trying to like, all right, how can I I see the muscles we're engaging. How can I incorporate that? And I think it makes a lot of sense for any athlete. And that's really, I think we've talked earlier, that's what these dancers are. They're athletes and we need to treat them like such. So I want to move in next to our misconceptions about training. But before there, is there any little wrap up kind of on the stuff we've covered already that you might want to touch on?
I mean, I think that sounds good.
Cool. Okay. So then, for anyone watching, if you guys have any misconceptions about training, questions about it, please leave them. We'll get to them at the end. What I'd like you to go into is, I guess, the 3 or so most common worries your new dancers have when they come see you, and if you could comment on those.
Yeah, so, and it's pretty much kind of like standard across the board. The big 3 are, I always, anytime you do an assessment, somebody comes in new, it's always, I don't want to get any bigger. Not all the time, but it's usually number 1 is I don't want to get any bigger. I don't want to lose flexibility, and I don't want to get injured. Those 3 are typical from anybody that's come in. Those are the 3 I've heard.
And that's the bigger one is the one I hear with primarily working with females, like off the bat. They're kind of like, oh man, and then they'll get in, they're like, okay, I bought into training. And then they'll come to do, let's just say like a dumbbell squat or something. And they'll grab like the 10 pound. I'm kind of like, what are you doing? Like, and they'll like move. And so I try, I don't know if you've ever mixed in like AMRAP sets. So I'll be like, we're prescribing like 8 reps. And I'll be like, go. And when they get to like 30, I'm like, okay, stop. Do you see how we're nowhere near? And you could keep going. So I think, but that's their fear. So they're assuming, in my experience, one of the big things, they're assuming they're going to get bulky. So I'd love you said that's one of the big ones you have. So how do you dissuade that?
So the first thing, like with the bulky thing, is like, with strength training and their activity level, the whole bulky thing is you're going to have to be into a calorie surplus first off for any athlete. And typically you have to slow your cardio down. But the amount of movement they're doing through the day, first off, that's way too much for them to actually even bulk up anyways. So what happens when you come to strength training is we actually see an increase in lean muscle, and they actually cut body fat, so they actually appear tighter and even smaller. So you do get a better look. You don't get this big, bulky misconception that people always kind of assume that you're going to get with the gym, which I think kind of relates back to the bodybuilding thing. Is that gyms have definitely progressed over the years. It's not, just bodybuilding.
And a point I add is I've been training since high school, so 18 years, whatever. I've been in the weight room. And my goal isn't necessarily muscle size, but I definitely work a little bit for hypertrophy. And like, people who've seen my videos, I'm not huge at all, but I've been training for 18 years with a side goal of like, I wouldn't mind getting bigger because I'm not a performing artist. And it's like, and I'm not. And I try to use that. I'm like, the people who are big are people who dedicate like everything. He mentioned one thing that's like, they're eating to gain muscle. They're not eating to perform. They're eating to gain, and then they're training to gain muscle. So there's specific movements they're doing. They're isolating certain movements, certain rep ranges, intensities, etc. So I'm totally with you. I think I just had one of my dancers on one of our online programs just yesterday, I think, mentioned, she's like, I'm getting compliments by like my director and stuff about my physique. And one of her worries initially was size. And she's a thin girl, so you would notice her gaining, but instead it's just tightening up, So yeah, you can see more muscle, but you're seeing the definition, not necessarily a bulk.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. Well, a bulk is truly something where you have to have a surplus of calories where anything that's over, you're just maintaining weight. So that's upwards, like if you're a 130-pound person and your maintenance weight would be like probably 1,500 calories, you'd have to be upwards of like 2,000 to 2,500 in order to actually put yourself in a bulk, and you have to remove that cardio.
I was going to say, and then like your 8-hour day, and even if you're only dancing 6 of those or 5, it's still a lot of movement.
Absolutely.
In kind of that cardiovascular range.
Yeah.
Great. So hopefully we're both saying the muscle size will not shock you. You might see some definition, but it's not going to be size, and hopefully you look leaner. The next common complaint you mentioned, flexibility, right? I think that's the next one. And yeah, can you talk about what you say to your dancers when you work with them about that?
Yeah, so the big thing with flexibility is and that's always kind of a hard one to like find, is that balance of like with strength training and flexibility is what's going to get, because they literally work against each other, but what's going to kind of like find that healthy balance between the two. I think what dancers got to keep in mind is like they're stretching every single day, so it's like flexibility wise, you're not going to really lose anything. What's going to happen is more or less you're going to just build stuff that's going to help you not sustain an injury from being so flexible. What I've actually seen a lot of times with like hyper flexible dancers is like we almost try to like not bring it down a little bit, but we try to tighten them up some, and what happens is they actually end up performing better even if we do get maybe a half a degree difference of flexibility.
And I would say the term I use for that, I think, is control. I think that's kind of what you're...
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's very interesting. I think coming from the rehab side of things and stuff, if anyone's... I'm not 100% about everything they do, but the Australian Ballet actually just released an article, and they've released one like 2 years ago as well, about why they stopped their dancers from stretching, because they're like, you're flexible enough. And I think in strength training and in dance performance, if strength training, we can get more control. And that's what you mentioned. The muscles are going to control your flexibility. They're going to stabilize. They're going to protect your joints. And then in dance, you're using your range of motion. So I don't think if you're training a full range of motion, if you're engaging a full run in motion in dance, you're probably not going to lose it. Now, I think if maybe you took a year off and all you did was strength training and you were just working like in your mid-range and you never move, you might come back after a year and be like, I feel stiff.
For sure, yeah. And I think the big thing with that is the whole like movement factor. So pretty much like with my training is I've actually completely gotten rid of static stretching. I think it's kind of, I don't, it's okay, if you're feeling a little bit tight after your workouts, and at the end of the day, it's a little different. But as far as like prepping yourself for activity or prepping yourself for class, you're not going to go to class and just like show up and start doing class without a warm up. So it's like weight training. So we always take a dynamic movement based approach to everything, and that's what's actually promote people to get stronger, and they're still actually not losing any flexibility.
Yeah. And that's
moving, like you said, they're moving with better control.
Yeah. I think that's a key point, is that I also am with you. I don't think static stretching has all the benefits many of the dancers think, but I also don't think it has all the negatives. Yeah. As long as it's kind of like in a controlled manner, you're using it appropriately. And like you're saying, the more important thing is, are you moving in your range? And that seems like what you're bringing into their warm-ups and stuff, which is awesome. And then you mentioned one other on here. You mentioned injury, which is definitely a fear. But then you also mentioned another one, which I actually think is a really big point when we talked earlier about speed, slow. They don't want to get slow. I think that's a term you use?
Yeah, slow, yeah. And I think what more or less like they don't want to feel like they're lagging in their movements, or just feeling like they basically feel like they have a 10-pound plate attached to them, but they don't feel like. And that couldn't be more opposite of what would happen. If you train in an actual like correct strength and conditioning kind of focus with explosion techniques and things like that, you're going to move twice as quick as you were. So I think the big thing is like once they move that fast and they learn to start moving quicker, that's when the whole control thing kind of comes into it. It actually does tie everything together.
Yeah. And if, like me and you probably done, if you've ever done like some heavy weight training, maybe like squats with some weights, and then you drop the weight and like jump, you feel like you blow through the ceiling. I mean, unless you've like completely burnt yourself out, but once you remove the weight, you're like, I'm so light, you know, and it makes it like you've got your body used to lifting all this extra weight. You take it away and you move faster, you move higher. And if you've done all the correct stuff, like some of the stuff you have on your page, for all this control and moving into different patterns, it's like, boom, it can all come together.
Absolutely. And that's especially with like jump training. This video I just posted probably a couple of days ago. I use the trap bar a ton. Kind of like a signature for me. I feel like I'm in that every single day with somebody. But there's a jump training that we were doing where you would do a actual full trap bar deadlift, lay the trap bar all the way back down, and then you go right into a jump.
Yeah.
Same kind of thing that you were just talking about, like with that resistance training amongst like just dropping the weight and going right into it. And we've actually seen girls and the guys' jumps actually increase over the past couple of years just from weight training that way.
And it engages, you're using all your muscles, you're engaging them better, which circles back to what we talked about in the beginning. So now that I'm connecting with my muscles, when I go to use them, they're all firing better. We've actually, one of our online programs is 4 jumps, and we spend like 5 or 6 weeks not jumping. And they're all like, this is the worst jump program in the world, until we start jumping. And they're like, holy crap, like, now I'm moving, because it's like we build that base. You don't have it. Like, for me, it's like if you're not, you can only get so much out of jumping, and you're jumping in rehearsal. Like, if I just make you jump for an hour, I think all I'm doing is increasing your risk of injury and fatiguing you. But if we strategically include it, and something I don't do a lot of my clients are remote, and I feel like it's a little harder to set up. But you also do, talking about bringing this control into jump, use bands a lot in your jumps.
Yeah.
Which is another now we're getting power, but we're also getting controlled landing, decreasing risk of injury with landing, twisting and stuff. Does any of this stuff, so you have all these creative exercises you're putting on them, do a lot of them you recommend them try on their own, or most of these ones you'd recommend, like, is it safe for them to try on their own, or would you prefer them work with a trainer before they give those a try, like from your Instagram page?
So anytime anytime you've never been in a gym, I highly recommend you need to work with somebody before you go do movement. Seek an assessment, do something like that prior to you doing anything. Make sure you're going to be set up correctly. I think what a lot of people do have to realize is that, like, the ones that on my page, they are professionals and they are very high level athletes. So it's one of those, a lot of the stuff they do is very like different. As in, like, if I had somebody that's just started, like a lot of my brand new ones that have never been in a gym before, yes, they're professionals and they'll get to that point with band work and stuff quicker than just your average person. But that's one of those things is like, there's always a starting place for that. So like, we would start, without that and then kind of progress into it. So I think that's what people have to kind of realize is you need to progress yourself. Progression's the whole kind of answer with everything. Our trap bar deadlifts, jumps, anything. And it's like, even with jumps, I feel you actually need to learn how to land before you learn how to jump.
Yeah.
Even when I return to sports stuff, it's like I always teach people how to land before we even jump. Be safe on the way down. So if you go up nice and high, there's no injury on the coming back. Exactly. And what I've noticed a lot with dancers is, and yes, I know you've seen it, especially, anytime they jump, they're super toe dominant. They're going to go right up on the quads are going to fire, calves are going to fire, it's going to go out of curl, and they typically will try to fall forward. So getting them to actually land functionally into the heel, engage the glute, core, everything like that, is actually allowing them to now jump higher when we do get into the jump.
Yeah.
Because those muscles are already activated, the muscle memory's there, they know what to do.
Yeah, again, I feel like in a lot of my talks with dancers, there's a lot of butting heads. So it's unique for me to be like just sitting here nodding. I'm like, yeah, I agree. So that's awesome. And I think it goes back to, it's all like circling around. It's like, okay, this is not what you're doing in dance. Let's engage here. Then it's also, there's levels. We need to progress, which I feel like a lot of dancers who aren't working with someone maybe are lacking. Because it's really easy. I post workouts on my page. You show sometimes like a circuit you're doing with your dancer. And it's really easy to grab that and go try it. But the trick is just repeating that workout once a week won't lead to the results you want 3 months down the road.
No,
because you're taking them. All right, well, let's start working jump. These are looking good. Let's add a piece to it. Okay, let's add a bar. Okay, let's take the bar away. Let's add a band. And they're stepping through. And I think same thing in like any of the workouts we post. Their workout by itself in isolation looks good.
Yeah.
But you need to build from that, or you need to take a few steps back to where you're at before you build up to that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Awesome. Great. Well, I hope anyone who's watching, we've had a lot of people come through, are enjoying hearing this. I haven't seen any questions come through, so I want to give you guys a minute right now. If there's any questions about training for dance, weight training, anything like that, specific exercises, we can touch on those. And then I'm thinking if there's anything else we needed to wrap up on while I leave that. Any of the things we touched on you feel like need a loop back or anything, or we think we got it?
I think we pretty much got it. Yeah.
Good. Let's see. Nothing else coming. Okay, well then I guess we'll wrap up there. So just to remind you guys, if you're from my page and you want to learn more about Grant here, it's BodyByCain, CAIN. I think, yep, that's all we got. Nothing at the end, right? All right, perfect. A lot of cool exercises there. He does some remote work, and he's also with and Rally at, what's the gym? O2?
O2. Yep.
And we don't have it in Florida, so I've never heard of that one. But and then if you haven't heard from me, I'm a physical therapist trainer. DPT Fit Dance is where you can find me. I also have some remote programs and do some telehealth stuff for rehab. And now we got one question. So if anyone else, shoot them down. We'll get to them. Let's see. Okay, we talked about oblique sling. This is a good point. We talked about a lot, but it's hard to like show it, and especially if anyone listens to this. If they wanted to see a little bit of your oblique sling stuff, what should they look for on your page? How would they know they found the right stuff?
First off, any of the exercises that involve anything with a resistance band attached to anybody's feet, that's pretty much going to give you kind of like that's a flag of like, oh, that's an oblique sling. Anything relating to that, basically all oblique slings, whether they're laying down, standing, and it'll all typically say in the caption if it's an anterior oblique or a posterior oblique sling.
Yeah.
It'll kind of break it down, and then always feel free to DM me or message me, kind of ask if there's any more questions with that.
I will say, Lauren, you're in one of our online programs. I'm trying to think what week we just talked about this. You're definitely going to see it come in the program because it is in the program now. But you'll see him like 1 foot up standing. You'll see them in bridge positions doing it. You'll see them on riser. So a lot of stuff. And basically, you can add on if you want just to explain oblique sling. We're engaging. There's like functional patterns that go across the body, right? So we're incorporating all these muscles that work in the rotational thing from hip flexor, adductor, actual obliques. Through that chain, right?
Yeah, and then so with that functional pattern, basically, thinking you said it rotationally, ballet, we are rotational athletes. So when you train, you should train as a rotational athlete should. So when the functional pattern goes through, you are actually training your oblique down through the hip flexor, all through the adductor, all the way down through the outer glute.
And just to reiterate, because this is so important, it comes up so much in the dance I'm working with, is you'll see this pattern, you're never going to do that in dance. But what he's doing is how can we engage this to a higher extent? How can we build this So then when you are in dance and you're just doing a pirouette, like everything moves better. Everything's staying stacked better, more controlled.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I don't think I saw any other questions fly through while we were doing that. Scrolling real quick here. No. So we will wrap it up there. Of course, if anyone has any questions, DM Kane or myself. We'll be happy to answer those. Grant, it was awesome talking with you. I'm really excited to see more of your stuff and hopefully interact with you more down the road.
Same. Yep. Looking forward to it.
All right, man. Have a good one.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.